the famous 72-hour clause. If you are in the process of buying or selling a property, chances are good you're going to encounter a 72-hour clause somewhere along the way in your offers to purchase or sale agreements. The 72-hour clause is often the cause of a lot of confusion. So let's unpack it for you and let's explain what the meanings and consequences are of this clause and how it can impact you as a buyer or a seller. Right, so the 72-hour clause specifically has to do with sale agreements where there are suspensive conditions. A suspensive condition in a sale agreement is a condition that exists that actually means the seller will not know his property has really been sold until those conditions have been fulfilled. For instance, examples of that would be if a buyer needs to get a bond in order to finance the property, or he actually needs to sell his existing property in order to be able to finance the new property. So in those cases, the seller doesn't know that his property has been sold until the buyer can actually fulfill those conditions. He could eventually, at the end of the period that is allowed for the buyer to do those conditions, the seller could find out that the buyer was just not able to do that. Either the banks don't want to lend him the money, or otherwise he just can't get his property sold, or whatever suspensive condition it is that he cannot fulfill. So the seller can't just wait around to find that out. He does need to continue marketing his property. Now, the 72-hour clause, which it's commonly referred to, it's also often referred to as the continued marketing clause, because it gives the seller the right to continue marketing his property, although he already has an offer on it with suspensive conditions. So the seller continues to market his property, and if he can find another buyer, then he can do so. He can accept the second buyer's offer. And if that second buyer is able to fulfill his suspensive conditions in his contract, in other words, if there's a bond, he gets a bond, etc., or otherwise it might just be a cash deal, then the seller actually knows that the second buyer is in a position to buy his property. He then gives the first buyer, who is first in line, 72 hours notice. Please remember that the 72 hours and everything here is based on a certain clause, and the wording in the clauses can differ from one contract to the other and one company to the next, etc. Right, so according to the 72-hour clause, the seller then gives the first buyer 72 hours notice. He has to give it to him in writing. He has to provide proof that he actually has a second offer and that the second offer has already fulfilled all their suspensive conditions. Then, of course, the first buyer has 72 hours. It usually excludes Saturdays and Sundays and public holidays, in which to fulfill his offer. Depending on how the clause is worded, the 72-hour clause, he doesn't have to match the second offer or anything like that. He simply has to fulfill his offer. In many cases, he can also simply waive the suspensive conditions in his offer, thereby just declaring that he's able to purchase the property. Very dangerous thing to do unless you're very certain that you are actually in possession of the funds or that your suspensive conditions have been fulfilled within the 72-hour period. Right, so after the 72-hour period, the seller will then know to who his property has actually been sold. Could the first buyer eventually within that period also fulfill all his suspensive conditions, or is he selling to the second buyer who already had his suspensive conditions in place? Just please remember, with 72-hour clauses, you have to read your specific offer to purchase or your specific sale agreement, as the wording in these 72-hour clauses can differ. The period might differ. One clause might give you 72 hours and working days. Another clause might give you 5 straight days, calendar days. So you must read the wording. It can also, the clauses can also differ in the format that the first buyer needs to be given notice. One clause might just say that he needs to be given written notice that the seller has another offer. Another one might say that he has to be given notice by the seller, and the seller has to prove he has another offer and that the second buyer has fulfilled all suspensive conditions, etc. So in any case, the clauses can differ. Please make very, very sure that you read your specific clause to make sure what the terms and conditions are. If you have any problems, you're welcome to call me or give us an email or whatever, and we can discuss it and give you some advice. If I'm not able to give you advice, we will definitely refer you to an attorney who can. Anyway, I hope that was some help. I'm not a professor or a lecturer or even an attorney, but I do hope that this was of some help to you. So please contact me at any time and I'll see where I can help you, or otherwise I will refer you to someone who can. In the meantime, go well and stay safe.